All right, B-listers, you know the drill.
This is your official spoiler alert for the episode.
If you don't want any spoilers, stop the episode now.
And if you don't care about spoilers, hold on to your seats because this episode starts
now.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Court.
And hi, fellow B critics. Welcome to another episode of the B Critics Podcast.
This movie is the movie that's going to make you question if you really know the people around you and honestly just humanity in general. It's super emotionally charged and has some amazing twists.
Yeah, it definitely does. But before we really get into it, let's tell the people where to find us. So our socials, you can follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at bcriticspodcast. Hit that subscribe button and follow our Instagram for all the best movie content.
Also, stay tuned for the end of the episode because we're going to announce next week's movie.
Okay, Liz, I think it's time to get into the episode. Our guest critic for this episode is James. Hi, James.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Excited to be here. Long-time listener.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you.
So James is a friend from college. Surprise, surprise. He is actually the husband of Annika, who has been on an episode already. So we'll link Annika's episode down below so you can check hers out as well. But yeah, so we've got wife and now husband on the podcast.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So with that, James, do you want to go ahead and introduce this week's movie?
Of course. The movie this week is 2014's, directed by David Fincher's Gone Girl.
Woo!
Woo! Oh, it is a good one.
It is a good one. It's a very good movie, and I forgot how much I really enjoyed this movie until I saw it again. It had been a minute since I've seen it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it had been a minute since I'd seen it too, and I forgot how it ended. And so when it ended, I was like, oh my God.
I realized like 20 minutes into the movie that I had in fact not ever seen it. So there's that.
Yeah, Liz texted me and was like, oh my God, I'm watching Gone Girl. I've never seen this. What's happening?
Right. No, it is definitely one that comes flying back to you when you see it. Because I think this is probably my fourth time watching it. And still, I'm like, oh, that's new. Oh, that's a different twist. Or that hits me a different way. Because I think one of the main things, and we may get into this later, is that I'm married now watching it. I had only seen it single beforehand. So there are a few story beats that hit a little bit different than they did before.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm not a married person, so I cannot relate to that sentiment, but I definitely have questions for y'all married people later. Okay, so I'm going to give the movie of the episode. Gone Girl is a movie based on a popular mystery thriller novel by the same name that is anything but an ordinary husband kills the wife murder mystery story. It follows Amy and Nick Dunne, their romance all the way from NYC to Missouri, unfolding a terrible mystery clue by literal clue. When Amy goes missing, Nick is thrown into a whirlwind investigation where he is the main suspect. Nick, with the help of his sister Margot, follows the clues Amy has left for him that lead him to discover a sickening truth. Amy is still alive, and she set the whole thing up. Dun, dun, dun.
Literally makes me feel ill. I'm having like PTSD.
Okay, I'll give y'all the episode ammo. So this movie is long. It was 2 hours and 29 minutes.
It literally kept going.
There were multiple times where I thought like, oh, this is the resolution. Nope. No. You're still in the theater seat. It's going to be a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I texted Courtney at the end and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I was hit by something. Like, I am like mentally exhausted. I'm physically exhausted. Like, it triggered all of my anxiety, this movie.
Yeah.
It's not an awesome weekday, guy.
No.
I watched this movie so I had come from the West Coast the night before. So I took the red-eye flight back to the East Coast, and then I went to work that day, and then I like got home and watched this movie. That was like the first thing I did, and I was just like, I was surprised that I was able to pay such good attention, but I was just like entranced, and I was like, oh. Okay, so this is a mystery, thriller, crime, drama movie. It's rated R, and very aptly rated R for language, bloody violence, nudity, sexual content.
Yeah.
And it, as James mentioned, it came out in 2014. It's done by TSG Entertainment, 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon actually was like on the production team. She's the one that like bought the rights to make the movie. So
it's her production house actually. And the funny thing that I saw was that she was originally going to star as Rosamund Pike's character, and then she actually took herself out of the project because she didn't think that her demeanor fit what the movie needed to have.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad she took herself out.
They also considered Emily Blunt, Natalie Portman, and Olivia Wilde, which I think all 5 of those women could have played this role. But
yeah, I think all of them. I don't think Reese Witherspoon could have played this role. I disagree with that one.
I think she could have. I love Reese Witherspoon.
So she's in Big Little Lies, which is like a darker show. And like she doesn't play like a super dark character in that show. She plays like a character that is very believable for her.
Like a mom, like she's a regular mom.
Yeah. Agreed. Yep. Like Carpool Mom. So it's directed by David Fincher, and he's known for psychological thrillers.
He did Fight Club, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Social Network, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. These all feel very similar in the way.
One of my favorite movies that he's ever made is Seven. It's one of his directorial debut with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. And his breadth of discography, or his filmography, is incredible. And the funny thing that I kind of wanted to set the tone for in the director's chair is what he's coming off of to direct this film in 2014. In 2013, he won 2 awards for directing. He won a Grammy and an Emmy. He won an Emmy for the first episode of House of Cards that he directed for Netflix in 2013. And he won a Grammy for directing Suit and Tie by Justin Timberlake and Jay-Z's music video. I know.
What?
Man's got a wheelhouse.
Well, I was kind of thinking, like, Liz, when you listed all those movies out, like, yeah, like, I definitely believe that he directed all of those, but they are all very unique movies with pretty distinct feels. I'm going to bring up one of those movies later, so we'll definitely talk about it. But this movie definitely has a pretty notable cast who we'll talk about. Ben Affleck, Rosamund Pike, Neil Patrick Harris, among others. And then this movie is known. It was pretty popular when it came out, but it's known for being an adaptation of a thriller mystery novel of the same name by Gillian Flynn. And the book was actually extremely popular too. So it was number 1. Came out in 2012. It was number 1 on the New York Times hardcover fiction bestseller list for 8 weeks. I think it was only surpassed that year by like the 50 Shades of Grey book. And then by the end of its first year in publication, it had sold over 2 million copies. And then in 2019, it was reported that the book had sold over 20 million copies.
Yeet.
Yeah, I've read the book.
It's impressive.
A fabulous book. Would highly recommend to anybody who likes like a good mystery.
And Gillian Flynn's also an amazing writer in a lot of things that she's done. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, I think. But she's also done a lot of screenplays with David Fincher. So they have worked together multiple times, even before this movie. And he is her go-to for writing. I think that's what makes his dialogue pop and makes him feel like he has his own little world when he's directing. Is he's a master of tone, but she's a master of dialogue. So everything feels very real watching a David Fincher film.
Yeah. Let's talk about David Fincher for a second before we move on.
Okay.
So I know he's known for psychological thrillers, but he's also known as being one of the most meticulous and hardworking directors in Hollywood. And it may seem like a little bit wild or like there's no way, but there is a way because I'm just gonna like give a little anecdote here. So Ben Affleck, who is apparently a jokester on set,
Yeah, I believe that.
decided to secretly adjust one of the camera settings like ever so slightly, and then made a bet with a crew member that Fincher wouldn't notice, and he actually lost that bet. Fincher was like, something's off, something's wrong, something's not going right, and figured it out. But
Isn't that like rule number 1 of like filming a movie that the camera people like cannot mess up, because like then they would miss the shot basically?
Yeah.
I mean, this movie, they filmed for 100 days and they had 500 hours of filming time. Like film at the end, they had 500 hours. I think this little joke was okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, Ben Affleck made it in the final cut, so that's good.
That is true. And talking through like the different actors for the Rosamund Pike, John Hamm came out a few days ago that he lost the role to Ben Affleck. One thing about David Fincher though is that he went and got Ben Affleck, and he was saying that his process was he typed in actors on Google and just started scrolling through images of different white actors, and he came across Ben Affleck, the one where he's like smoking and has his hair like head up, like ugh. Like that's the picture he came across. He's like, "That's my abuser. That's who I want. I want that. And I want him." So we got him.
Awful.
Okay, well let's get into it then. Let's talk the characters, because we need to talk about like Nick Dunne, Ben Affleck. I think he's perfect for this role. Yeah. I think David Fincher did a great job with whatever weird Google search method that he used to find him.
Agreed. Like walking through it, I even was watching it with Annika, and we were both looking at it. I'm like, okay, let's put John Hamm in that scene. Does it still work? And the answer is no. It doesn't.
Absolutely not.
He's too squeaky. He's too easy. Like John Hamm is too clean cut. Like Ben Affleck he's grizzled enough. Like you can really believe, this guy is a professor that cheats on his wife.
He's just a rando guy, yeah.
Well, I think it's like the dichotomy too between Amy and Nick, right? Rosamund Pike and Ben Affleck. Like Ben Affleck's supposed to be like the Southern charm boy who like came to New York City, and John Hamm would have just been the New York boy who like doesn't belong in Missouri. You know what I mean? Like Ben Affleck belongs in Missouri. Like I believe that.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him Southern charm. He very much is Midwestern.
Still charm.
Well, yeah,
but Midwestern charm,
but not
Midwestern charm. Okay, yeah, fine.
But
same thing.
But
they're all kind of charming.
To Elizabeth's point, though, they really did do Missourians dirty through the whole film.
Yeah,
Fincher's not like, or Gillian Flynn, I guess, does not like the state of Missouri.
Yeah, I made a note, and I was like, why do these movies always start in like a rundown town? Like, why is it always like a little bit shoddy? Like, why can't it just be like a regular city? I don't know.
Right.
Well, and they literally say that Missouri makes Amy go fucking batshit crazy.
Like, I think she was already crazy. I think we established that she was psycho well ahead of time.
Okay, so how do we feel about Rosamund Pike?
I loved her.
I agree completely. I think she's perfect
for
the role.
Yeah, I agree.
Her like demeanor and her voice like really bothered me, but it worked very well.
I agree. And like to your point, the voice was what was so sharp for me. It's like her voice was so staccato, so cold, so without feeling. And I think that's really what had to have for the girl. And I think they did a really good job with picking her for that, matching her voice with it. Because she does a lot of voiceover work too. And then I think this movie kind of changed like her career trajectory. Like she started doing thrillers and political dramas after this, whereas before she was doing like The Wife in a comedy. Or like she had a big 2014. Yeah, she had four movies come out, counting this one in 2014, all of which were comedies except for this one.
Yeah, that's totally different. That's kind of impressive too that she like has that ability and range in her acting.
I like after seeing this movie, I cannot imagine her in a comedy. Like she will forever be Amy Dunne. Creepy, unsettling. Not it.
and I agree with you. And people kind of thought that going into this movie because her last major appearance in a film was her first acting credit, which is the Pierce Brosnan Die Another Day. She was a Bond girl for Pierce Brosnan's Bond, I think in 2002. And then she had like small minor movies rolling up to that. But then she was this. I think this is really her like next big movie to that. So people coming in, seeing her as a Bond girl, and then now seeing her as this cold, calculating individual, I think
Crazy
really,
person.
yeah, exactly. I think really helped like change what she wanted to do. Like she's no longer typecast as that person, that Bond girl, that wife or sister or mother or whatever. It's now she's got some real chops. I think it was good for me. She was nominated for an Academy Award for this role.
She deserved
She
the
lost,
nomination for
but
sure.
I agree that she deserved a nomination.
She did an incredible job, in my opinion, of being creepy. Like
without being like textbook creepy. She was like, there's something off about this person, and like you can't really pinpoint it until it's like out in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like there's something rotten inside, but you can't really find a crack to see it. Like it's there, but it's under. But I think she was great.
Yeah, I thought she did a good job too of looking like the way that they, I guess, did her costuming during the time that she was like on the run and her living out of her car, and like she dyed her hair and stuff. She looked awful.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And that was the point. But yeah, she definitely. The transformation is ridiculous, and
that because normally she looks gorgeous.
Agreed. But I think that, and we can come back to it, but that was probably the cringiest moment of the film for me. Neil Patrick Harris was kind of like, you need to look like Amy again. Oh my God, that is Amy. Don't do.
You can see it on her face too that she was like starting to understand what was going on.
Yeah, she'd gone from aggressor to victim, and we'll get there.
Well, we can talk about Desi. So Desi is played by Neil Patrick Harris, which I personally feel is kind of like a random casting.
But it was so perfect.
It was perfect.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. Like he did a great job with it. I just think it's kind of random that he's in this movie.
He looks like the rich boy who would act like snobby and rude to people. That's what he looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that he kind of has that worminess about him that you kind of thought was like played for laughs in How I Met Your Mother as Barney. But here in a different tone, it's played for like, oh, this guy, I'm not okay here. I need to get out of this situation. Yeah.
I liked when he was like when they're doing the search party and they're having like the get together at the community center, and he comes in, he's just wearing like his sunglasses and you get like the glimpses of him. I was like, oh, there's Neil Patrick Harris. Hello. And then he just like dips out really fast.
He's like, do you know that man? I think I know that man.
But I agree. He also was super cringe. Like what you were saying, the scene where he was telling Amy that she needs to look like herself again. Ooh, buddy, that was bad.
Yeah. It was, not good. But to your point, Neil Patrick's had an amazing year as well that year. His book came out. He was directing 2 things on Broadway and starring in Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which was David Bowie and Izzy Pop did the same thing. So and also I think he did Smurfs 2 and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2.
He had a busy year.
Yeah, so it's like he's never anywhere, but always everywhere at the same time.
Dang.
That's funny.
So I went down a rabbit hole of understanding where these actors were to play the headspace because of the casting. Like the people in it is so good. I just had to understand where their headspaces were filming this and how they got to that. Like Ben Affleck, I think it really helped him that he got the role of Batman during this. So you can tell throughout the movie he bulks up. He gets physically larger as the movie goes on because he's trying to get bigger for Batman. I think like the broodiness of it really helped him tone into this film as well, especially the end.
Mm-hmm. They had to put like baggy clothes on him so it wouldn't be super, super noticeable.
Right.
Because I think like for the film, originally he was supposed to lose weight because he's trying to look like he's
stressed,
innocent, right? And so it just like went the opposite way, which worked even better.
I agree.
I didn't even notice.
I did. There was a couple scenes where I looked at him and I was like, what the hell is different? Like, why do you look different? That's why.
I think the best you can tell it, Courtney, if you want to go back and look, is the last scene where he takes out the trash and he puts it down. If you put that against the first one, like he's wearing the same hoodie, but it's so much tighter on him at the end. than it is
I
in the
think the movie's
beginning.
just so long that I like didn't even notice.
Yeah.
Okay, so next we have Margot, who is Nick's sister, twin sister, played by Carrie Coon.
Yeah.
I
Another
thought
random casting, but also perfect.
Yeah, she was perfect. I agree.
I agree completely. This was her first acting appearance, like on the big screen, and it kind of projected her into doing a whole lot more. She's got to lead in a TV
Wow.
show after this. But I think as
Wow.
a twin, it was pretty cool to see that relationship. So I have a twin brother, by the way. But to see that relationship on screen, I know you guys know that. I'm telling everyone that. But to see a relationship on screen is very cool to see. And I think that Margot actually kind of turns into the audience proxy. Like, I think it starts out being Ben Affleck. You're supposed to feel what Ben Affleck's feeling. This is happening to him, happening to us as the audience. But when you get the middle of the road switch around, like, oh, she's still alive?
Do you have
Now
anything to tell
Margot,
me?
yeah, exactly. Now Margot is the one where it's like, okay, now we're reacting with her. Like, now we're feeling what she's feeling. We found out about the mistress. We found out that Amy's still alive. We're feeling exactly how Margot's feeling.
Yeah.
The moment that he opened the woodshed at Margot's house and found all of that goodies that Amy bought, the first thing I thought was, oh my God, Margot. Oh my gosh, you're in so much trouble.
She was okay.
Barely by the skin of her teeth.
Thanks to their amazing attorney.
Tanner Bolt, played by Tyler Perry.
Which was phenomenal. That was the best casting. Like, he had such a small role, but Tyler Perry was absolutely perfect in that role. Like, Tyler Perry doesn't play roles like that either. Like, he's like a comedy guy, silly comedy, and he just did so well. I was so impressed.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed too. I think he brought some comedy to the movie too that I appreciated. Yeah, and because it's very dark, and so I think he adds a little bit of like, what the fuck is this situation? Like that kind of vibe, which we kind of needed.
And I think he brought much needed levity. And I think it's funny that we're all talking like how good he is, because when he comes into the movie is right when we're supposed to root for Ben Affleck again. So it's kind of like Aladdin gets his Abu. Like, you know, we get the sidekick. We get the funny sidekick now that we like him again.
Yeah.
Or we want to like him.
Yeah, exactly.
So next is Detective Rhonda Boney, played by Kim Dickens.
She was good. She was like the quintessential Southern cop.
Yeah, I think she was just like any other Southern cop in a Southern cop TV show. Like, she played it perfectly.
Doing her thing.
I agree. And I'm going to go on record since we're recording and say she is my favorite character in this movie.
Oh.
The detective, Kim Dickens. She is, every scene that she's in, she steals from me. Her accent is beautiful. I don't know if it's Missourian or not, but I would love to hear an audiobook by that. And I think that she does a really good job. Like, and because I do not think she's an audience proxy. Like, I think that she has her own feelings and her own like understandings and trying to find, like, she really is trying to find like this case. To y'all's point, she is like the quintessential small town cop that something big's happened to her now. And she's trying to navigate that. But I think she does a beautiful job. Her and then her little detective buddy that's with her a lot of the time. I don't know who that is.
Little turd.
As an actor.
I do not. He was awful.
He was awful. But the fact that she stayed so optimistic when he was dogging Nick so hard, I think that was, I guess, shows a good pull on her. I really liked her as a character.
Yeah, one scene that like really like exemplified their like good cop bad cop situation. He's like, my wife says he killed her, and she's like, oh well, if your wife says. But I thought just worked really well.
Yeah, I think she did a good job too of like keeping you questioning. Like, she was always a little bit skeptical. Like, you could just see it in her eyes, like when she would talk to Nick or when she would talk to other people. And like, she always kind of had this look of like, I don't really know what to believe. But like, you thought that she had something going on stirring in her head.
Everybody knows more than they're letting on, but nobody's saying anything.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so last and probably most random, we have Andy, who is Nick's like, I don't know, 20-year-old affair lady. and she's played by Emily Ratajkowski.
It was like heartbreaking when she came into the film. I was like, "You dumb ass, you literal idiot!" Like, like I wanted so bad to believe you had done nothing wrong, and like you are not guiltless now. Like,
and then he had sex with her in Margot's house. I was like,
and Margot saw her leave. What is that?
Not only did Margot see her leave, like she opened the door to her bedroom and could hear them fucking in the living room. Like, what? Crazy. When he's literally on like suspect number 1 for murder of his wife, and he's like doing that. Crazy.
And that may be top, like tied from second or third best scene in the movie, where he closes the door and she's immediately behind him. Margot is,
and he's like, "Let me explain."
Asshole. But I think that's so like intrinsic from a like sibling perspective. Like they know when you're doing something you're not supposed to, and they're still going to help you, but they know, but they're still going to hate you for doing that bad thing as well.
Yeah.
I think that was good, but I don't think, and me and ironically my twin brother were talking about this. I don't think anyone in that time could have played a mistress against Rosamund Pike than Emily Ratajkowski. Like that has to be such a hard casting to find. A mistress for a woman who's already like the top of the class. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you know that Ben Affleck actually like suggested Emily Ratajkowski for that role.
Of course he did. He just wanted to fuck her.
Well,
he didn't actually get to, Courtney.
Hey,
it's not real. Okay.
But he did. They were in some pretty conspicuous situations with her and not a lot of clothing.
Tits were out.
Very true. That might be another reason why they hired her. They saw the blurred lines video.
Well, that is actually though. That is what Ben Affleck showed them. He was like, "If you want a mistress, here she is."
Yeah, she's perfect. Isn't she like? Wasn't she recently seen with Harry Styles? Isn't that a thing?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure what's going on with it now.
Beautiful people.
I saw a really cute video of Harry Styles on TikTok. This is like very much an aside, but I promise it'll be 2 seconds. So it's, people like to take, I guess he's on tour. I don't know. Maybe he's not. Maybe these are old. People like to take videos of their favorite artists, like when they're up close to them or whatever. And this girl like had a sign that said he's a 10, but he can't do a backflip. And he's like walking by, like singing, reading the sign, and like had a break and looks over at her and he's like, "But I can do a backflip." And I thought it was cute.
Oh, you've entered Harry Styles' TikTok. Get ready. Get ready, because there's a lot of videos that are out there. He's very interactive with his audience.
He's adorable. Like, what's not to like about him? He seems very nice.
Okay, well, anyway. Emily Ratajkowski. Oh, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I would like to talk about one additional character that we maybe not talked about. And that is Casey Wilson's annoying neighbor.
The Noelle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I love her as an actress. I don't know if you guys have seen the show Happy Endings. She was also on SNL. But I think that there is no higher casting for annoying neighbor than Casey Wilson. That is her typecast.
Well.
And it's really good. And I actually have a note here that says always bridesmaid, never the bride. Because I don't think that she ever gets her due in anything that she's in. And I want to change that personally.
I like the scene where Amy's like she starts describing like the plan that she laid out. And she says like, "And befriend the dumb neighbor." And you just see her like, or the idiot neighbor. Like, the local idiot.
Refers to her as idiot through the whole like montage.
Yeah. Invite idiot into home. Have idiot pee. Like, Steele said pee.
Ooh.
Crazy. Yeah. But I really do like her as an actress. I think she is the best annoying neighbor cast ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was really good.
Good addition to the character list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next I want to talk about just in general how this movie feels. And so we already talked a little bit about David Fincher, and we talked about the fact that this was a book. But one thing that's interesting is that the book, like, while I think the movie follows the book plot-wise, like pretty much almost to a T, the feel of it is a little bit different. Like, I would say in the book, Amy and Nick are kind of like normal people, believable characters, and it's like a mystery novel. And then in the movie, like kind of from the get-go, it's sort of like elevated from reality, like similar to how Fincher did like Fight Club, or like even like The Social Network, how that one's kind of like a little bit higher than reality.
We talked last night a little bit about this and saying it's kind of, it has that like reality, false reality feel like Pulp Fiction has, of where it's like you're aware that this is like going on, but you're also like, is this really going on? Like, is it real? Is this actually happening? Kind of thing.
Right. And I think a lot of that you can kind of tell too in like all of the flashbacks. I was getting so bogged down with the dialogue in the flashbacks because it's so outrageous. Like
Mm-hmm.
no one would
No
say
one
things
talks
like
like that.
yeah, and no one would walk next to like posters of their mother's work and be like, I quit cello in 8th grade, but Amy in the book was a prodigy next. Like, and just
Yeah,
one by one down those, like that's not something you do with your husband, like walking around. That's not a real thing.
Yeah, I made a note and I was like, she has so much animosity for her parents. Like she's already screwed. Like
Hmm.
you know there's something wrong with her just from that scene, cuz you're like, okay, I get it. Like you're living in the shadow of this Amy person and it has royally screwed you up. Like really
Right.
bad.
Yeah, James, to your point about the dialogue, I remember when I was watching the scene where Nick and Amy meet at the party, and that whole dialogue scene where he's kind of saying like, "Oh, you're like the cool girl," kind of thing, um like I just felt like that was so unrealistic. Like nobody talks like how they talked.
No.
So,
And I
I
guess
agree
too,
with
we
that.
can chalk it up, and I kind of forgot about this a little bit going into it, but it's kind of the flashbacks of her diary, and that was all fake. I know some of it was
Yeah.
at the beginning was true with some true bits, but the end of it was definitely fake, and that may have been the point. I mean, we may have just kind of talked through the point of what they were trying to do with the dialogue and the flashbacks, making it seem ridiculous because it was quote made up by Amy
Mhm.
for the diary
Mhm.
purposes. So that may be
But
They
one
she
of it.
said that the
too
past stuff was real.
She sprinkled in real things
Okay.
throughout it and added her own flair. She also, and I don't think this was part of her diary, but the dialogue continues after the diary ends, right?
Hmm.
And you hear her say that she had constructed this whole personality to get Nick to fall in love with her.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
she wasn't even the person that everyone thought she was. Like every person she interacted with probably got a different Amy,
Hmm.
just based on how she wanted them to feel around her, which is absolutely sociopathic. That's crazy.
I agree, and even like her actions when she's alone kind of border on her not having a personality. Like she's driving in
Mhm.
the car, she's dropping her pins out the window. It's all tied to what she's doing with Nick. She gets to the motel, and she really doesn't have anything to do. She sits around, she pines, she does stuff for her murder plot. Like I get it, but she doesn't have. I don't think she has a base personality. I think she just bases it off whatever needs she needs to have
She's
to get what
also
she
like
wants.
willing to go so far with this that she's like planning to kill herself. And like it's the
Yeah.
ultimate frame because there's going to be a body, so he's going to die too. And it's like uh, what? Like what in the world?
Agreed. I have that
Just
written down as a note. Kill myself? Question mark. That made me laugh.
insane. Insane.
And she had it like every single month, like
On the same
spaced
day.
out.
Yeah.
Hmm.
A month from when, so it was like the 5th of each month because she went missing on the 5th. So
Mhm.
it was like either I'm going to do it a month or maybe 2 months. Like when do I want to turn up kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, she's a
Wild.
nut.
Yes.
Okay. So
But
this
back to what
movie,
you're saying with tone.
oh,
Yeah.
yes. Let's not
Yeah.
leave tone because I was going to leave it.
Nope. I would like to say a few things on tone before we get out of it. And to your point, you were hitting on exactly what I want to talk about was David Fincher's tone. Is that you can
Oh, yeah.
tell he has a theme in his movies
Mhm.
between
Mhm.
Fight Club 7, Zodiac, even The Social Network, all is like muted colors, which this movie had in droves. But also,
Mhm.
like the tone of it is almost like a look over your shoulder type thing, where something if he makes the movie
Yeah.
look like something else is going on that you can't see. And I think that
Mhm.
is really good for like the mystery genre and the thriller genre. Even when things are like quote revealed to us, it still feels like those revelations may not be true. Like we may not can trust our
Mhm.
narrator, like in Fight Club. But in this, I mean, you really can't trust Amy for anything that she says, which is good. But I think to your point, like the tone, yeah, it stays within the Fincherism of it, if you'll allow me that word. But the darkness of it is really what I think makes, to your point, Courtney, draws you in. I think that's what keeps you, is you can kind of understand the reality of this world. And I think that's what helps grounds it, is that it's not, colorama or whatever it is. What is it? Vital color, whatever it is. But it's very muted. And I think that helps bring you in, and it kind of makes you help you understand the story. It's not a fun one, but you're going to be enthralled the whole time.
I was having like Twilight flashbacks at the beginning when we get the like blue overtone.
Okay.
And I think it's supposed to look like it's the break of day, because you find out later they woke up in the morning and she was like, oh, like go like clear your mind. I've got some things to set up for her scavenger hunt or whatever. So it's supposed to be like that time of day, but it was like definitely giving me those vibes of like, okay, like something's happening. Yeah. Something's off.
Yeah, you couldn't trust anybody. You couldn't trust Amy. You couldn't trust Nick. And like even back to what I was saying with like Detective Rhonda Boney, like even she looked skeptical. Like you always thought there was something on her mind. So it was like kind of trying to figure out like what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
Technicolor.
So
that's what I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah. I thought too, and I think the movie was very well done. I think the minds that created it were fabulous. One thing that I wish that they had done a little bit differently, and had they done it differently, like I would have felt differently about the movie, is like from the very beginning, you get this eerie feeling that something's wrong. And if they had like dialed that back a little bit and made it out to be like, oh, they're this like Americana family, they moved to Missouri, they love each other, everything's hunky dory, but like you don't even get that from the beginning. The very beginning, you see them see each other and not interact. You see him go to a bar and start drinking in the morning and complaining about his wife. Like, you don't get this sense of comfort from the very beginning. And I know what they were trying to do with it. Like, I get it. They wanted the whole, like, it's part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if they had like dialed that back some, I think the build up to the suspense and the twist would have been like that much better.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was getting at with the fact that like this one feels like larger than reality and the book feels a little bit mundane. Like at the beginning, you get that just normal people feeling, and then it gets like into this mystery psycho thriller. Whereas like in this movie, it's just like the feeling that James was describing about like kind of not really knowing what's going on the whole time. So the movie sort of split into two. So the first half is where you think Nick killed Amy, and the second is where you know she's lying. And so before we go on to talk about the rest of the movie, I have some questions for the married people. So Liz and James, you are both married.
Not married to each other.
Nope.
Yeah, well, we've already established that.
We're married separately.
So okay.
Sorry, it's a good joke.
Y'all. We know Annika, we know Hayden, we know the
Yeah,
we know
they've already
the
been on the
spouses.
podcast. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Did you believe Nick's claims of innocence from the beginning?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
Liz?
and I hate to say that I did, because I don't want to say that, but it's true. I did.
Yeah, I didn't want to, but I was like, there's no way this guy did that. Like, he is not smart enough. There's no way.
No, that's exactly what I was thinking. There's an intelligence barrier there. I don't think he could plan it. Like, I don't think he could orchestrate it to this level of secrecy.
What about when you found out that about Andy?
No. I suspected, actually, I did suspect that from the beginning. I was like, their marriage is too much on the fritz. They're having too many problems. There's no way there's not somebody else. There had to be somebody. Either he had one or she had one, and it seems like now they both had one.
Yeah.
Okay. So, James, you actually inspired this question.
Oh no.
What do you think do you think this movie would have worked if the roles had been reversed?
No. I think if the roles had been reversed in this film, it would have been a comedy. It's not a joke. Like, I think if
Yeah.
the man is setting up to kill the woman, that is like some Steve Martin-esque slapstick comedy that ends with, like, them all coming back together and be happy. I think the fact that this works so well with Rosamund Pike doing it is the disposition of, our world. I think the women are calculating, cold, and can have that form of a side to them, whereas men are generally, cold, but not in a way that's calculated. It's very surface level, whereas women are very inside and very calculating, think through stuff like that. So I think that it wouldn't have worked in a gender reversal. I think it would have been a very different film if Ben Affleck had planned all this for Rosamund's. I use their movie names. I apologize. I don't think that if Nick had done all this to get back at Amy, that it would have been, one, the same level, or two, even the same film at all.
No, men don't think this way. Men don't act this way. They don't plan that far out in advance. And like going to the links to make it look like it was a setup crime scene, a man would never do that. Wouldn't happen.
Right.
Also, like, this is like kind of stepping back for a second. Asking if you thought he was guilty from the beginning. When he gets home and the door's open and the cat's outside, that's like immediate red flag that it wasn't him, because you see him and how much he loves that animal. He would never leave that door open for that animal to get out. Never.
Yeah.
He wouldn't. So there's no way it was him. There's no way he would have left that door open for that cat to get out.
I agree. Actually, Annika pointed that out to me as well. Elizabeth, the cat is kind of like a tell through the whole thing, low key, because like even how much he cares for the cat. You can be like, because he makes sure that the detective's feeding the cat. Like, they have that conversation, make a point to tell you that in the movie, and it shows you that Nick, like, he does have a level of care for the things in his life. Now, whether he cares as much for his wife as his cat, that's up for debate. But I think, Courtney, to your question, would this be different? You kind of see it at the end, to Liz's point, because Nick's only idea about solving the marital problem is, I'm leaving you. I'm gone. I'm out of here. I'm leaving the problem. I'm sitting it down. And that is his intellectual stop. Like, that is where he's like, there's nothing more than this that I can do. It is me leaving you. And that's what I need to do for me. There's no other idea. Whereas Rosamund Pike, to get out of it, wanted to fake her entire death and move to kill herself. Like,
Two very different people.
Exactly.
Women are complex.
Two very different perspectives. I agree completely.
Women are complex.
I agree completely.
Yes.
Yeah. Where is she?
Yeah.
We love
Okay.
you, Annika.
So next question. Why do you think Amy came back?
She said why she came back. She told us.
She had to.
Because
To get back any semblance of a life that she could have before that would be perfect. And this kind of goes into what I think one of the main themes of the film is attainable perfection. And that's all that she ever wants in her life, is to be perfect, is to be amazing Amy, is to be what her parents think that she is. And she can't do that trapped in Desi's house. She can't do that out in a town. Like, that's why it didn't cross her mind to just live at the motel forever. She had to kill herself, because living in the motel forever is not a perfect life, and that's not acceptable for her. She has to do what's perfect. And the perfect thing in that scenario is killing herself, because then it's the perfect crime. So she's striving so hard for perfection that she has to go back to get that semblance so that she can have the idyllic life. And at the end, when they're both sitting there in their nice clothes, talking through how everyone's happy about being back, they are literally the perfect couple. They have made themselves into what looks like, from the outside, a perfect being. And now she's trapped everyone in her life into that due to social constructs. She's made this entire thing public, and there's no way out of it. So I don't think it was an original plan to come back, but I think that what happened, it was the only logical thing in her mind to do to get what she wants, which is perfection.
I think too, you kind of see it like as she's watching his interview, you see it like click in her mind of like she sees him and his potential. And she says like she's like, I can have that. I can get that back. And like I can live that life that I want. And now he's gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
And now that he's shown the world who Nick Dunne is, now he's actually got to live that way. And she was like, this is my chance. This is my chance to have what I want and to get the Nick that I have been trying to train him to be. Like,
Yeah.
this is it. And she capitalized on that opportunity.
What a crazy, scary concept. Because, James, I do think you hit it on the head. But I hope that nobody is looking for perfection with me, because that's
normal people don't
terrifying.
act this way, Courtney. We've established
No,
sociopathic behavior.
But no one's perfect. Like you can tell even in the movie, and I think this is what's hilarious, is that looking through it through the lens of perfection, you can see that everything that Amy does is so calculated, perception, and so, but something always goes wrong. It's never 100% correct. There is always an issue. She made a hole in one, but she dropped her whole bag of money and got robbed.
Yeah.
She was going to kill herself, and then she didn't because she got recognized. You know, like there's things that happen to a point, and then they mess up. But then Nick is the opposite, the juxtaposition of it. He does everything he can to make himself fail. He has a mistress. He does not go to the bar to help out Margot. Like all these things, but then they still work out. He gives an amazing interview that makes Amy come back. The mistress comes out and he has that off his plate now. So that doesn't come back to haunt him anymore. All the stuff that was bought on the credit card at Margot's house ends up helping him rather than hurting him. So it's like the thing of a woman can do every single thing she wants to correctly and have one thing go wrong, and that's what ruins her life. Whereas a man can get 1,800 chances to do what he can, and it still work out exactly the way that he wants it to, from a societal understanding. And that may be a little on the nose again, but still, I think that was something that was like again with the attainable perfection is that she can't do anything right, and he can't do anything right either. But it all still works out for him regardless.
Except for the end, which we'll get to. Not
end.
yet.
Agreed.
Yeah, but also I'm not going to like talk about the end, but I'm just going to say like the way that they leave it off, there is still some question of
not
like
talk about the
what
end,
they do.
but the way they leave it off.
There's
the last
it's
4
like
minutes.
for interpretation.
Okay, so we're done with the questions for the married people. We're gonna just talk about the topics. So one topic is I don't know if it's a theme, but like the sugar storm scene that they start off Nick enticing Amy, and he does that thing where he like touches his chin with his 2 fingers, and you see that throughout, and then you see him do it with Andy, which was really shitty.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was just kind of his thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he thought as much of it as she did.
Yeah. It was another one of those like perfect moments that like isn't really perfect. Like kind of blew up in Amy's face.
Yeah.
I agree because I mean, it just hurts. Like it's just different. And I don't think that he thought through any of that, but that's obvious.
No. Yeah, it goes back to him just being stupid. Like
exactly.
He's just not
intelligent.
Not all there. It's okay.
Okay, so I think we talked a lot about Amazing Amy. The fact that like Amy wanted to live up to this like weird character that her parents created for her.
Yeah. I have like a fun fact. We don't need to like talk too much about Amazing Amy, but when this movie came out on Blu-ray, when you got your Blu-ray movie, it came with an Amazing Amy book.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Do you know if they wrote a bunch of them, or was it just like one Amazing Amy book?
It was just the one, and it's called Tattletale. And like I read some reviews online, and people said that it was actually like really well written and executed, like a child's book.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
just an aside.
I don't really want to read that. Next, I want to talk about the treasure hunts. Amy's treasure hunts for Nick. So the first one we see is I think it's the 2-year anniversary treasure hunt.
He's all excited about it, and
they get the sheets for each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cute.
It was, and I think that's something that's really cool, like them doing that. But I was talking to it with Annika, and I think that's a great idea. But the annual of it is what would be the issue, is because how could you one up yourself every year for an entire marriage? You know, like again, something that seems perfect, but in reality isn't. Like everyone wants that for them. You know, like I'd love for Annika to do that for my birthday. That's in 4 days. But but no, like it's just it's just not feasible to do year after year. I mean, especially if you live in Missouri.
Well, yeah, and she would go all out and like get restaurants involved, and like all these like surprise things would happen. I was like, I could never, like, that would take so much effort to like put together.
I could do that, and I could see having fun with it. I think where she went wrong is it stopped being fun, and she started making it too serious, and that's where the resentment came in, and he started to hate it.
Yeah,
because he was like, in the beginning it was fun and it was cute and it was flirty and it was like what I looked forward to, and then she got mad at me because I couldn't figure one out, and I still don't know the answer because she wouldn't tell me, and it's like little things like that.
And then after that, I'm sure she kept putting in like clues that would hurt him because she knew what he knew and what he didn't. Because one thing we can say about Nick and Amy, they know each other, like intrinsically. They do know each other. So I assume that she would be putting things in there that she knows he would not know. And then it becomes like a battle at that point, which it seems like their entire marriage was a literal face-off. Like, but still.
So then we get the final treasure hunt, which is the treasure hunt throughout the movie, the clues that Nick's trying to figure out so he can find Amy. I thought it was really interesting. I thought the clues were well written. And
of course, she's a writer.
Yeah. But I just think it made Amy so creepy. Like the clues were so creepy. And to think like how much forethought she put into this, absolutely wild.
She probably spent years planning what she was doing.
Yeah, because she had to know where him and Andy had sex, because that's where all the clues were. And like that's what, and again, like, what underlying for Nick, he knows that these things are that, but he's finding these with the detectives, so he has to be coy and not.
Why did he start hiding them? I don't understand why he decided to start hiding the clues. Like, why would he not
like openly give them to the police?
Yeah, like what do you have to gain?
I think he wanted to find what Amy had for him before the police found it.
I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
You want to get ahead of whatever it was.
Yeah, I think he knew it was going to be batshit. And so he was like, I need to know what this is. Because I think if he gave the clues to the detectives, they would probably go like find it potentially and like block him from seeing it.
Right.
And he was
I just feel like they would have figured out what was going on like well ahead of time. Like I don't know. Like her clues were like very obviously pointing to, I know what I'm doing. Like, good luck getting out of this.
Right.
I think that's too why the detective like always looked a little skeptical, because I think she knew like something bigger was going on, but she couldn't figure it out. And then you had the other detective, the like sidekick guy, who was like being the stereotypical like, well, obviously it's the husband killed her, like all the signs are pointing to it. And like that dichotomy was really good, because I think it was kind of like what we were going through as audience members of like, okay, did he kill her, or like what the hell is going on? Okay, so then one of the clues involved the diary that she burned too in the furnace.
How did she even come up with that?
Yeah.
That was literally going to be my question, Liz. It's like, do you think either one of you in a week could create 7 years? 2 years of dating, 5 years of marriage, 7 times 365 entries?
Yeah, well, it probably wasn't every day. It was probably like irregular entries. Because it was kind of a small diary.
Yeah.
But I where like I would not come up with the idea to do that. Like, to tell your story that way, your fake story in that way. And also, how did they not figure out that the ink was like not like old ink? Like, if you're
Yeah.
dating back like 7 years, like the ink is gonna be a little faded, and like they were able to like psychoanalyze this whole thing, but they didn't notice that there was no aging on the journal, and
Well,
like
that's the
there was
same
so many things
handwriting for
missed.
7 years.
Yeah, what the heck?
Like she switched up
Yeah.
pens, I get it, but that's not enough for me as
No,
CSI
no,
mind. It is not enough.
no.
I do think the detective was like skeptical of the diary, like from the beginning. Like
Agreed.
you
Yeah.
could really
She
tell.
should have
Like 'cause
gone with her gut. Like, this female detective should have like acted upon her gut feelings. And at the end, when they're like having that conversation at the diner, like you can kind of tell that she's like regretting not doing that, like not acting on what she thought was right.
yeah, no, yeah, I agree.
I
But
think so too. 'Cause she liked Nick at the beginning.
I think she
Like
liked him the
liked is
whole
a strong
time.
word. Well, until the
I
mistress
think
thing.
she
yeah. Okay, the mistress thing. Liz, I know you wanted to talk about this, but the whole
yeah.
like teacher student dynamic between Nick and Andy.
I thought it was so unnecessary. It didn't add anything to the story. Like, it didn't make him seem more guilty. It could have just she could have just been a random girl he met at the bar. Like, why did she have to be a student? Like,
I think it
I
was the
just
most believable of like what would have happened, to be honest.
I don't. I really don't. How many teachers go on to have relationships with their students? Not very many. You hear about every single one of them. So, I really
Mm.
don't think it's that believable. I went no, I really don't. Maybe
But
college, but like
how many professors teach Emily Ratajkowski?
If I was Emily
She
Ratajkowski's
He's the
teacher, I
I
character.
don't
would
think it was that believable.
definitely try to seduce her. That is for
I
sure.
I'm
don't
not
think
above
it
that.
was the most believable option. I think I just don't think it added to the story. Like, it was just kind of like a subplot. I was like sitting there trying to figure out like, okay, like what does this have to do with anything? Nothing. Literally nothing.
I think
Like,
what
she
it
could have just
did,
been a beautiful woman. Like, why did it have
no.
to be a
I think what
teacher?
it did is it made you angry. Like what you're angry
Did you
right
hate
now.
him?
You're like, why the fuck did Nick get with a student? It makes you hate Nick. And I think
I
that's
didn't
what
hate
they're
him.
going for. Well, you're mad that he went after a student.
No, I'm mad that that was written into it. Because she could have been
You're not
anybody.
faulting Nick in any way. The character
No,
who
no.
made that
I
happen.
I literally wrote and I said, like, I'm not saying it's okay to cheat, but damn, he didn't deserve this. Like, not good. Obviously bad. Cheating is terrible. It affects more than just two lives. It's in no way a good thing. But like, I just felt like the infidelity could have just been random infidelity. Why did it have to be this big blow up thing of like a student and a teacher?
Well, I also think that goes back to the fact that the whole movie feels larger than life. Like everything that goes on is at the end of every single spectrum. So like Nick couldn't just cheat on Amy. He had to have an affair with a student that's like potentially the hottest woman on earth. Like that is what happened because like that's kind of how this story goes.
Yeah.
And then I
That
had to
was
keep
just like,
pulling back in the theme, but like it makes sense because it's perfect for him, and he didn't have to try
Yeah.
it.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely
No
like the
no
teacher
effort.
relationship. It's exactly. It's no effort, perfection from him, and where Amy puts in her absolute all the time and still gets to the 99%.
How did that man
yeah.
pull Emily Ratajkowski? Like to be honest, like
Ben
she is just
Affleck is
like
a very good looking man.
I know he is, but like Nick is like a disheveled, like
He's
washed
a
up.
Come
professor.
on now,
He's
it's
a
still Ben
professor.
Affleck. It
Okay, yeah. I
dated
mean,
Anna de Armas, Jennifer Gardner, and
yeah. I'm not
Jennifer
gonna say I wouldn't. I'm not
Lopez.
gonna say I wouldn't.
Like,
I
come
don't
on,
know.
everyone says I
I
look
think
like
it's
him. It's
I think it's
crazy.
very believable that the two of them would be together. And I think what was so like upsetting for Amy is that she thought that she would be the most beautiful, interesting person in his life, and he found someone equal to or like potentially like a little pushing, being like better than her in different ways.
She was pissed.
Oh, wouldn't you be? Who wouldn't
Rosamund
be?
Pike did
Yeah.
mad so well. Like
Yeah,
you
she
could
did.
hear the shift in her voice when she was like really angry, and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Agree. But
I
she also has that
lived
calm, terrifying too. I think
it.
what
Mhm.
rattled me the most is when at the very end, when all this shit was like said and done, and he pushes her up against the wall
Yeah.
and yells at her, but then she like gives it right back to him in a calm,
Mhm.
very like you're already screwed. You can do whatever you want to me because it's already over for you, buddy.
Like
Like that
you
was
married me. This
yeah,
is what
you've
you
done
signed
this to
up
yourself.
for. Yeah. She
Wow.
gave me that feeling of like when I was a kid and I would get in trouble, like if my parents didn't yell, I knew it was so much worse.
So much
Like
Mhm.
worse.
if it was a whisper, oh, I was in
Yes.
big trouble. Like
My
she just
mom
has constantly that.
my mom used to do this thing where she would crouch down to our level, like when we were little, and she would whisper in our ear, like especially if we were in public. And like that was potentially the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that scene where he shoves her against the wall, Ben Affleck is actually pushing her against a wall. There's no like false wall, there's no padding, nothing. And they had to do so many takes of it that
Wow.
Rosamund Pike like thought she had a concussion at one point.
Yeah,
Oh my
I don't
goodness.
doubt it. That's wild.
Pretty yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, she got thrown.
Who
He's a
allowed that
big
to
man.
happen?
Yeah, he was
And
bulking up
hadn't
for
at that point he was
Batman.
yeah, what?
Yeah.
Wait, that's crazy. I did
Yes,
think that looked really realistic. I was
It
like,
yeah.
was real. It was real.
oh,
I would not
Rosamund
want to
Pike.
be like s- angry Ben Affleck is like a nightmare for me. I would
mhm,
be terrified of him.
mhm.
And she just like stood there and she's like, "What are you gonna do?
Okay,
Yeah.
What
before
are we
we
gonna
finish
do?"
up the end of the movie though, we have a couple more things to talk about.
Okay.
Well, really just like one last major thing to talk about is just
Mhm.
like all the men that Amy kind of like fucked with over the years. And we're going to end
Yeah.
with Desi. So the first one is that guy that Nick tracks down who's like
College guy.
the
College, yeah.
college guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, who Amy like claimed raped her, and then he's been on like the sex offenders list like forever since then. And
Mm-hmm.
that was when like that was kind of like the first domino that fell, and you were like, oh, like I'm putting all this together.
Yeah.
The first time I realized she was capable of like what you think she's capable of is when she's at the motel and she's hanging out with this like woman that she's befriended that lives at the motel.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman, they're watching the like Tonight special about Amy Dunne, and they're talking about how amazing she is, and the woman says like I really love for someone to just say like she was terrible. She's like she looks uppity, one of those rich snob
Oh,
girls anyways. And she gets
Yeah.
up to go to the bathroom, and Amy reaches over. No, not reaches. She stands up, walks over to this woman's drink and spits in it for no reason. Just spits in it just to get back at her. And I was like, "Oh, this lady is crazy."
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Can we talk about how dumb Amy was though in that situation? Like, why was she befriending those random people that were like sketchy as hell and then like losing her money to them? Like,
Because
that was just the dumb.
she needed an audience.
She needed an audience.
I
She wanted
guess.
people to feel bad for her, and she wanted to be believable as this person that is just this like vagabond type loose in the wind human being.
Why
I
did
don't
she hit
know.
herself
Yeah.
with the hammer? Like
To
to
make it
make her.
look like she'd been abused. That was her story.
Because she was planning to
Okay.
kill herself in a week, so she wanted to have the bruise on there so that it was, I guess,
Believable.
correct or
Oh, that
conducive
makes
with the
sense.
signs of rape or whatever or
Domestic
beating.
abuse.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
I'm sure too she didn't want to be like super recognizable. So she was like, if I put a blemish on my face, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
But
Um.
Courtney, I
Okay.
do have
So.
one question that I want to ask in the
Okay.
same vein as your marriage questions from earlier, and it came
Okay.
up when me and Annika were watching because I do not know my own blood type. She does not know her own blood type. Do you guys know your blood
I
types?
don't.
Yeah,
No,
I
You have to
do.
say
I
it on
do.
the podcast for public record. You do?
I
Mhm.
do not.
Really?
Yeah.
That is very good for you. I do not know mine. And because when they asked that, when they like chastised Nick for, "Oh, what do you know about your wife?" Me and Annika look at each other like, "I mean, we don't know that. We probably need to figure out our blood types, I guess."
Yeah.
So Liz, you
They-
don't know yours or Hayden's blood types?
No.
Oh.
No, I don't think my parents know my blood type.
Yeah.
I used to donate blood a lot, and the Red Cross would call me all the time, and I was really curious. So one day I just was like, "Hey, like now that you're like spamming me all the time, like what's my blood type?" And they told me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought some of the questions they were asking him were valid questions. Like, you don't know your wife's friends. You don't know
Yeah.
what she likes to do. You like don't know what she does during the day. Like, she sits and reads all day long, 365. Like, no.
I didn't care.
But like the blood type thing, like they were asking some questions that they were just trying to like work him up. And you get that that's what they're doing because the sidekick cop is like, "Should I know my wife's blood type?" And she's like, "No. Like, it's fine." But they're just trying to get him worked up to see if he'll slip up and make a mistake or just decide he wants to confess.
Exactly. But there's nothing, and the two things. Sorry, there's the one thing on that is very pertinent. Like he didn't do it, and they're trying so hard to make him confess. Like that's the thing that I think like hit me the hardest. That wasn't from a marital perspective. It's like just as like a person, and someone's trying to pin something on me that they think so hard that I didn't do. Like him throwing that glass down in the house at the end of the questioning of the detective. Like same man. Like I get it. Like all this whole time, you know you didn't do it, but here everyone is like almost ready to arrest you for this. I would just, what do you do? Like there's nothing to do in that situation.
No, it's very frustrating, and it happens to people all the time in our legal system. It's very sad.
The other thing too is like he knows Amy so well. Like he knows like something's up. Like he knows that she's kind of a part of like what's going on. So
I think he like by that point he is fully aware of everything she's done. But he like up until they get confirmation that she was pregnant, I think he thought he could get out of it on his own. And he was like, "I'm innocent. Like she's got to have made a mistake somewhere. Like they're going to find out I'm innocent." And then when it's discovered that she's pregnant, he's like, "That's like, I can't come back from this. This is like textbook. I killed my wife because she's pregnant. I need a lawyer right now."
Yeah.
Okay, before we get to that, the last thing I want to talk about before the end is killing Desi. The whole thing where she crawls back to Desi and she goes and lives at his lake house and she does it again. She fakes a murder and a rape, or she fakes a rape and then she literally slices Desi's throat open.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say he didn't deserve it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I think it's partially his fault that he had. He was so blindly in love with the idea of who this woman is to him that she could have pulled out a gun and shot him in the face. Like, it didn't have to be as concealed as it was. Like, I think that he allowed himself to be taken advantage of in that way because he so wholly wanted to just be this one person's person.
Well, I think too, he was wholly planning on keeping her captive in that house forever.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I think she knew that too. And she was like, "This is not any better than where I was before."
I think that those shots, like those scenes were incredible. Like it
was terrifying.
The one where she fakes the rape and then and you see her in the camera. And then the other part where like when she actually kills Desi, like in the bed and like that really like synthy music is playing and like, oh, it was so creepy, like so well done.
So you just brought up the music. I want to talk about the soundtrack for a minute. Okay. Because the soundtrack isn't like in your face. Let's talk about the soundtrack, but it was very carefully crafted. And so Fincher has a duo that he works with on his movies that make his soundtracks. I don't know their names, but they are prominent. And he pretty much like gave them inspiration and they created this music. And so I have like a little thing here. So he was inspired, Fincher, for the soundtrack, was inspired by a trip to the chiropractor where he was at the chiropractor, and they play that calming music that isn't really all that calming. It's like meant to be calming, but it's not. And so the whole soundtrack is meant to have the feeling of something trying to make you feel at ease, but it's not quite getting there. And at times it's like the opposite. It's like trying so hard to make you feel like nothing's wrong that it's making you think something's wrong.
Right.
And they did so good. Like, I didn't even notice the music, but I felt uncomfy the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, it worked.
And I think that's the purpose of a good soundtrack, is for you not to notice it. And I think the fact that we did notice the music means that it was really, really good. Like, I think when I left it, because I normally pick up on music like heavily because it's such big, because you think that, John Williams or like somebody huge, like, Hans Zimmer or something like that, their music, like, their calling cards. But these two guys have been working with Fincher for like, I think it's 8 films, and they're 2 band members from the band 9 Inch Nails. Which
they're
is
fantastic.
Crazy, but they're really musically intelligent.
Yeah. They do a really good job. I think this was their first one that they did with him, and they just knocked it out of the park.
I agree. They did a fabulous job. I was listening to the soundtrack on Spotify a little bit, so
nice.
Oh, creepy, Court.
I know. I love like movie scores, though, movie soundtracks. I think they're fun.
But one scene I would like to highlight before we move on. It's very quick, but there was one to where they're sitting in the room, and it is the detective and her little guy, and they're talking about like the simplest answer is normally the right one, and he says that to her. Yeah, and she's like, "Well, I don't think that's necessarily true here." And then he leaves and walks directly through where a janitor's cleaning. And I think that is like very the juxtaposition of that is like him just saying the simplest answer is always the right one. But then he just takes the simplest answer, the quickest point from point A to point B, and it's the wrong answer. You don't want to walk through where someone's cleaning. You can need to walk around. But he didn't do that. I think that was just another thing, that there's something always going on in the background of a David Fincher film, and you need to check it out. But to go back and watch that one, it's pretty on the nose, but it's pretty cool.
Speaking of the background, so this movie like has a deceptive amount of CGI in it. Like crazy. Pretty much if you're looking through a window, it's CGI'd. And he did that so that he could control every single aspect of what was going on in the world at the time it was filmed. So every scene has CGI. There's over 600 shots that had CGI in them in this movie.
Wow.
Which is just crazy.
Like he would change the weather outside, basically, because he wanted it to be like
everything.
Specific.
Cars going by, people walking by, animals in the yard, what the trees looked like, how they were moving, if there's flowers, no flowers. Like every single piece was carefully constructed, and it worked so well.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, that sounds like very thoughtful, meticulous. Everything going on in the background.
Yeah.
Okay. So any last topics before we talk about the end of the movie?
No, let's get to the end.
No, I do have something.
Okay.
My bad.
I am the queen of fun facts. Let me share them.
I love a good fun fact.
Okay. So Amy Dunne's helpline is a real number that you can call. And if you do so, you will get a recording of the first few pages of the book Gone Girl.
Oh, wow. I'm going to call it immediately upon ending this recording. That's cool.
And another
Did you try
one.
it recently? Does it still work?
Oh, I don't know.
What's the number?
It's 1-855 for Amy Tips or something.
For Amy Tips,
yeah.
Another one. So the scene where you realize it starts coming back to like Nick being like the audience, and you realize that he realizes that he's in deep shit. And it's when he's at the airport going to visit Desi. He's decided that he's already talked to the lawyer. He's decided he's going to go reach out to Desi before he goes home. And he's watching the news and seeing that everyone hates him. And he puts on a baseball hat. There was a lot of controversy around this baseball hat because they wanted him to wear a New York Yankees hat. And Ben Affleck is a Red Sox fan.
Oh my gosh.
To wear the Yankees hat, and it caused a 4 4-day production halt as they figured out which hat he could actually wear. 4 days.
Wow. He is such a problem on set. This messing with the cameras, like I'm sure he did so much other dramatic stuff. Like I bet David Fincher is regretting his little Google search pick now.
It was still perfect. He was in a Mets hat, so it still worked.
Yeah, New York.
But I just thought that was so funny because he was like, absolutely not, I'm not wearing the Yankees hat. And they're like, you're going to wear the Yankees hat. And he's like, no, I'm not.
Gosh.
I don't blame him. I would have if I was in the movie and someone tried to put me in an Auburn hat, I'd be like, nah, sorry.
Nah.
Yeah, I agree.
Can't do it.
Nah, man.
And then the last thing before we talk about the ending, because it has to do with the ending, I promise. During production, after they had announced that they were making this film, David Fincher and Gillian Flynn like went around falsely claiming that the movie would have a different ending than the book, so that all of their book lovers would have a false sense of comfort watching the end of the movie, or that they wouldn't have a false sense of comfort watching the end of the movie.
That's cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So the end.
Mm-hmm.
The movie ends with they're about to go on to what's that lady's name? The one that they show throughout, who's
the
like
awful
the
lady. She's
Yeah,
terrible.
news talk show
Bad.
host lady.
Right. I
Yeah.
can't remember her name.
But they're about to go on her show. They have her in their house, and Amy gives Nick a present. And the present is a positive pregnancy test. And you realize that what she must have done is like gotten herself like artificially inseminated with like
His sample.
semen that she's saved somehow from like that past scene that they showed, like
playing the long game.
yeah. And so he goes on and he does exactly what she says. He says, yep, we're pregnant and we're expecting. And then they kind of show them like they're like gonna live their life, and then the movie ends.
I thought it was very interesting that the very final scene is the exact same as the beginning. Same words, literally the exact same scene. Exactly the same.
Really?
Yes.
Because they didn't go anywhere.
They didn't move
Technically.
forward.
They're in the same exact spot they were in when the movie started as a couple.
Yeah. And so you see
Yikes.
him stroking her hair at the very beginning, and he says like, what are you thinking? What's going on in your head? What have I done to you?
Oh, but I thought that was like a flashback. Or a flash forward.
The very first thing you see is the very last thing you see. Exactly.
Yeah, I thought that was like a flash. I thought that was like a flash forward. Like they showed it at the beginning.
Yeah, they showed it at the very beginning and at the very end of the film.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting.
The exact same scene. But it had two very different meanings.
Correct.
From the beginning.
Especially like the last question, what have we done to each other and what are we going to do? Like, I think that's your ambiguity there at the end. Is like this is all happened to them as a couple in the span of what was it, 5 months? And they're trying to move on from that to have like neither of them really want to be there. It's there just out of her drive.
She wants to be there. She wants to
not
be
with
there.
him. She wants to be in this idea of their relationship, and he is captive in it, I believe.
Yeah, I would be terrified of that lady. Terrified. I could never. Like when the first night when they were there together and he like tucked her in the bed and then went to the other, like the guest room and like locked himself in. I was like, you better put something against the door too, because she'll figure out how to get in there if she wants to kill you. Trust me.
And that mirrors the scene from the flashback of her being scared as the makeup story of her locking the door, being afraid of him. Now it's really happening. He is legitimately afraid of her and is locking the door and can't go to sleep. Because of. So she's become exactly what she
made him out
to be. But he is still the one everyone thinks is like this. So I think calls into like the other kind of thing that's going on in this film is like the difference between like being a victim and being the aggressor. Because I think that in the movie it starts out that we think that think Nick is the aggressor and that Amy is the victim. And then it gets to the point where we switch and now at the motel and thing, or like when we like see her in the car driving, the whole montage happens. Oh, Amy's the aggressor. Nick is the victim. And then we get to the motel and Amy becomes the victim again. We go to Desi's house, Amy becomes the victim again. And then we get back to the house and she's the aggressor. Like the playful between of having to understand how different or how it can be intertwined, how you can be the victim and the aggressor in the same instance, but also not be at the same time. Like I think that was something the movie was trying to hit on, is that there is no clear cut in reality. There's no clear cut victim. There's no clear cut aggressor. Every time it's who controls the narrative.
Yeah, I think too, and we like kind of started to talk about this, but we didn't. She puts herself in situations where she looks like a victim.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like for all we know, when she drops her money, she immediately started thinking they're going to come after me. Like, how am I going to handle this? Like, what am I gonna, like, who am I gonna call when this happens? Like, she is like putting herself in like she could have left. Like, why did she stay there? She knew, like, by the way they reacted, that they were gonna come after her, and she chose not to leave. Like, she put herself, and I'm not victim blaming because she was the victim, but she put herself
She deserves
there.
to be
She was
victim
smart
blamed.
enough to know
It's okay
that you don't stay in that situation. You know, like
Right.
I don't know. I think she wanted to be like, she wanted to look like she was like, oh, poor pitiful Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do y'all think the end means though? Like when you watched it, like first take, like the movie ends, like what do you think of that? Like I guess, how do you think it plays out? Or do you have an idea of how you think it plays out?
I think like how it plays out. I believe that they stay together. They have their child, and Nick is a phenomenal child to the parent, and Amy is an okay parent, but in her own right. I think Margot has a lot of, I guess, stout in raising the child. But I think that's what he gets latched onto, is the relationship now is between him and his son, or him and his daughter, rather than him and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where it goes.
I think I have like a little different opinion. I think you kind of start to see Nick start to like use his brain. And I think that where it left off and him saying the whole like, what will we do, is putting the doubt in your mind that maybe he's not going to stay and maybe he's going to get her back. Maybe they're going to continue this loop of like doing things to each other to get back at each other like forever. And she's faked pregnancy before. Like, what do we even know that she's actually pregnant?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's a good question.
I think she's pregnant. I kind of agree with James. I think if she's pregnant, like he's staying for sure. And I think he's done with his antics. I think he's like gonna just play it out.
Yeah. And I think to Liz, to your point, I think that maybe he would attempt to get wiser if the kid was not there. But I think that the kid's there, he's kind of having to step up for that situation. And Amy knows that. I mean, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole reason why she's done what she's done. Is that it's making him step up to be a father so that he stays
he won't leave.
A husband. And they have their little idyllic life.
She's the worst.
Yeah, you don't like baby trapping.
No, that's
no. B Critic's very against baby trapping. I'll say it here now.
We're going on record.
There's one thing.
Yes, I don't like that. Okay,
I agree.
All right. Well, that's the movie, y'all.
Yeah,
it's a very long one. We talked about a lot. So now I think it's time to do our ratings.
Woo woo.
Okay.
As a reminder, we rate all of our movies through Letterboxd, so 0 to 5 stars with half-star increments. And James, you are up first.
So up first, I believe my rating for I know my rating for this movie is a 4 out of 5.
Nice. I think, ooh, pretty good.
It's not changed a lot since I saw it for the first time. It does not have a lot of imperfections to it. I think for a movie about perfection, it's pretty perfect. And you kind of think through it, and at least from the direction, from the acting, it won a lot of awards. It was nominated for many Academy Awards, many BAFTAs, all that good stuff. I mean, the accolades are there. And I think the strongest point of the film is the cast. I think maybe even one switch out and you have an issue with the chemistry. I think everyone was perfectly cast. and did a perfect job of what they were doing. So 4 out of 5. It could almost got to 4.5, but 4 out of 5 is where I'm staying. 4 out of 5.
Nice.
Okay, Liz.
I gave this one 2.5 stars.
Oh shit! What?
And I mean, 2.5 is halfway there. It's
Okay.
a good movie. I think y'all could tell I was extremely frustrated the entire movie about like little things that were happening. Um, I can appreciate that it was a masterpiece because it just like wasn't my cup of tea, and it left me like I said, like literally exhausted. And that's not how I like to feel. Like Elle Woods, hoo free, like whatever. I like to be happy at the end of a movie, and I was not happy. And so that's why I got 2.5 stars. Not because it's a bad make, but I just couldn't get into it.
It's fair.
Okay, well, I disagree. I gave this a 4.5 stars.
Nice.
I want to echo like a lot of what James said. I think the cast is amazing. I love Rosamund Pike. She's like amazing in this. I also loved the book. And this movie is actually, I think, my favorite book to movie adaptation I've ever seen. Like, I am very critical of them typically, and this one is really, really good. And I think it's unique. And I think they did such a good job, like capturing the essence of the characters. And I love movies like this. So, 4.5 stars.
Nice.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about like some of the what the critics say in the world.
Yeah.
Letterboxd, the average for this movie is 4.5 or 4.1 stars out of 5, which is pretty close to like what our average was.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
got an
you dragged us
88
down a
on
little.
the tomato meter, which is pretty good because I feel like the tomato critics are like sometimes they can be pretty rough with a film.
So that's the
true.
critic score on Rotten
Yeah.
Tomatoes. Yeah,
And
that's
the
very
audience
high.
score on Rotten Tomatoes is 87, so
Okay.
tracking. IMDb, it got an 8.1, which I don't even know how you like rate a movie on IMDb, but
IMDb, I go on the
has
app
it.
all the time. It like randomly asks me to rate, I
Random
think Gone
movies.
Girl, and I panicked and like tapped it so fast and it went away. I don't even know what I rated it. It could be anything. I think it just surprises people. So I'm putting less stock into IMDb.
Yeah, but it still got an 8.1, which is
Yeah.
that's like tracking with what everybody else is saying. And then 80% of Google users liked the movie. So overall, I think it was very well received. Even though
Mhm.
I didn't like it, I can appreciate that other people would like it. And I completely understand why the two of you enjoyed the movie.
Yeah. I think you just don't like this type of movie. And then also there was
This is
like
not
some
my
things that you
genre.
didn't agree with, like the whole like teacher student dynamic thing that grind your gears.
And and I can see too, Liz, from your perspective, being like the whole murder mystery plot or like the whole murder yourself plot had a few holes they kind of glazed over. So I
Mhm.
can see being from like an intellectual standpoint, like, oh no, she never could have gotten that pee, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, like, okay, just because you like turned your toilet off, it doesn't like she didn't turn the toilet off, she just stopped the water. It doesn't like catch it just because you stopped the water. Whatever. It's fine.
Yeah,
We understand
it's
I'm
fine.
frustrated.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps up the episode. James,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. You came with the facts this
Yeah, you did.
episode, and we appreciate you
I
so much
appreciate
for
it.
it.
Yeah, no, of course. I've been, like I said, friend of the B Critics for a while. I've been gearing up for this, and I'm really appreciative for the opportunity. And I just appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Bye,
Bye, James.
James.
See y'all.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'd appreciate it if you could leave us a rating or review, depending on where you're watching or listening. It's your way of paying us back for this wonderful content we're sharing.
Yep. And you can find more information on our website, bcritics.com, or find links to all the things on our link tree in the episode show notes.
As promised, we're going to tell you a little bit about next week's episode. So, we're going to be talking about Knives Out, which is more of the traditional murder mystery comedy, but has just as many twists and surprises.
And be sure to subscribe, follow us on all the things so you don't miss it. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts.
All right. Bye, guys. We'll see y'all next Monday.
Bye, guys.